All right. Hey, welcome back, my friend. My name is Danny Dumas, and this is the Earn Your Title podcast. And I'm excited today. I've got Mitchell Osmond on. He's going to be sharing a lot of value with us. He's going to be coaching me a little bit today. And so, Mitchell, why don't you tell us about yourself, what you do, how you do it, and how you could help my listeners become better husbands, fathers, and leaders.
All right. What I do, how I do it, and how I can let you...
Just, real quick, nothing, just small.
Yeah, so I am a high-performance coach to career-driven men, and I help them reclaim their home, their health, and their happiness. And so typically, really what that means at the end of the day is I help men really kind of improve their marriages, improve their fitness, their overall health, and then their mindset, right? And so a lot of my clients, a lot of my listeners on my podcast are men who really want to show up as powerfully at home as they do at work. And they find it difficult to flip the switch when they get home. A lot of my clients would say that they feel powerful at work, but powerless when they come home. And so, so what do? I keep it real simple, man. I tell people I work with people 3 different ways, 3 C's. Through the content, which is the Dad Nation podcast, through courses, which I have a course called the High Performance Husband, and then coaching, which I do 1-to-1 and group coaching. But yeah, man, I help the same guy over and over and over again. It's the career-driven man who wants to really level up at home and knows deep down that he was built for more.
Where do you see the disconnect between, maybe he's a CEO at home, or at work, he comes home and he just doesn't feel adequate? Is it a knowledge thing? Is it a confidence thing? Is it like you don't get your bachelor's degree in dadding, right? Or husbandry, where do you think that disconnect is and on that, that continuum of CEO versus, useless at home?
Well, yeah, I think that's a huge question, Danny, and I'll try and answer it the best I can real quickly. But I think it's a multitude of reasons. There's a couple of things that we need to understand how we're wired. Number one, in our masculine nature, versus say, if we come home and our wife is operating, out of her femininity, which is, completely different wiring, completely different foundations as to how we, desire to be communicated with, to be loved, all those different things. And so, number one is understanding our wiring. Number two is understanding our context, like especially entrepreneurs, business leaders. It's their job to fix things. It's their job to provide solutions. And the vast majority of the time, especially in marriage, our wives aren't looking for a solution. They aren't looking to be fixed. They're looking to be focused on, like to listen with them, to empathize with them. And so that's when we talk about, the context. I think is very key. And then the third reason is, I think a lot of guys struggle with the fact that it's really easy to measure success at work because you do well, you get a performance bonus, revenue is up this quarter, whatever, you got more clients coming in through the door, you name it. It's very tactile, very tangible, and again, going back to our masculine wiring. When you think about the essence of masculinity, it's driven by purpose, by excellence, by accomplishing things, by, all those different things, right? So it's really easy to know when you're doing well at work. And so when we get validated that way, it just makes a lot of sense. But when we come home, it's much harder to understand the metrics, if you will. There are no metrics. I say to people all the time, like, your 6-year-old boy, when you come home, he's not going to be like, "Hey, Daddy, here are 10 strategic reasons why you're the number one father in the neighborhood." He's not going to do that. And how do you measure if you have made moves in your emotional health? It's also ethereal and it's ambiguous. And so we struggle because we can't quantify it, I think, because of how we're wired, right? And so what ends up happening, Danny, is a lot of guys, because of how they're wired and they spend literally all day fixing things, they come home and they end up treating their wife and their children like employees, because, well, that's what they've been doing all day. And that's actually how they're wired to work, to fix, to optimize, to strategize, to, whatever. And so problem is our kids aren't our employees, or our wife is not, a colleague. She's our bride, right? So
Right.
The same rules don't apply. And that's why we get caught in this trap over and over and over again. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've had to apologize to my wife, and it wasn't, we were in a good space. So I said, I apologize for using logic and reasoning in this because it was emotional and I was trying to like solve the problem. And same thing with your kids. Like you want to rationalize with this 6-year-old who's just hungry and sleepy, and there's no rationale behind it. Mm-hmm. Do you think is it possible to scorecard's not the right word, but to have indicators that you're doing a good job as a dad, or do you just kind of have to get rid of that mindset of that I could win or that I could succeed in some measurable way, as opposed to parenting and like when you look back 18 years ago, yeah, I think we did all right. Are there some things that we can measure, or do you think we just need to change our mindset on what success looks like for a dad at home versus at work?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, yeah, you can for sure, but it's just not in the conventional way that you kind of you want to, right? Or are inclined to. So really what happens is, we come home and we're sort of floundering and we don't know, like I said, if we're doing better or not. So the first obvious answer would be ask. Ask your spouse, hey, how are we doing? Are you feeling, connected to me? We know that a woman's three basic needs are to feel seen, to feel heard, and to feel safe. Right now, those can be broken down into more categories and subpoints. But at the end of the day, which we could get into if you wanted to, but at the end of the day, having a conversation with her and saying, hey, are you feeling safe? Are you feeling heard? And are you feeling seen? If not, how can I do that? How can I do that for you? How can I love you better? And she's going to give you an answer, right? And the thing is you got to take action on that answer. So number one is, I would say, we don't ask often. We just kind of try and figure it out, and then get frustrated when we shove advice down the throat that they don't want to hear.
Right.
And so asking those questions, which again, at the end of the episode, don't let me forget, I have a free gift I want to give your listeners that can help with this specific thing. The second thing I think is to, let go a little bit of that expectation of like, it won't be as practical as it is in the workplace. Right. And that's okay. It doesn't need to be. And then the third thing I would say is you have to understand what success looks like for you, because you could look at, and I call it the gap trap. You could look at your neighbor or your brother-in-law or her dad or whoever and compare yourself to that dad or to that husband or to that marriage. And all of a sudden you're constantly comparing yourself to someone else's success, not yours, not your own. And they don't define, and what happens is they begin to define success for you, not you. And you get overwhelmed and you're constantly striving. You're living in this gap of who you are and who you want to be, but it's someone else's measure of success. And so look inward and say, what does it look like for us, as a family, for me as a man, for me as a husband, for us in our marriage to be successful, And I have a framework just called the Prime Thinking Framework that walks you through. It's an acronym that helps you sort of discover what success is for you, so that then you can compare yourself to that measure of success, so that can bring you more content, I think, and then just understanding that would allow you to define success for you, so you're not struggling with that, which is kind of where your question came from.
Yeah, I think guys in general probably need to push their expectations timeline wise. Like in my profession, I'm a fireman. When we show up, if there's a house on fire, when we leave, if the house is no longer burning, that's success. It's a 30-minute to 3-hour ordeal, and I know that I was successful. And I found with kids, you just don't get that. I have a very vivid memory. My oldest, he's 17 now. He was probably 4 or 5. We were at a restaurant, and the waitress dropped off his drink, and he said, "Thank you." And me and my wife looked at each other like, he did it on his own. We didn't tell him. So for 5 years, we had been reminding him every single time, "Hey, buddy, say thank you, say thank you, say thank you, say thank you," probably 1,000 times. And he was at a restaurant. The waitress set the drink down. He said, "Thank you." And it was like, that was success. It took 5 years, you know, like, so I think as a guy, realizing you're not going to get instantaneous success, or like I had a experience where my same son, older, he said something to one of his friends. It's something that I tell him. I said, but you know, I would always, you got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. He said that to a friend, like it was his words. And I thought, man, that only took 14 years, you know, like it takes some time. So I think, I think moving your expectations and changes is pretty important. Now, that's really good stuff. Like what you shared with me is awesome. Did you, you know, were you a 15-year-old reading self-help books? Like, how did you get to the point where you had that information that you could share with me? Are you always like this? Did you struggle? Like, how did you come about becoming a coach and getting into this world of helping men?
Yeah, no, that's so good. Yeah, I can share a bit of my story because, I did not have it figured out. I tell people all the time, I could tell people what not to do because that was the first half of my life was doing everything wrong. But let me give you the Coles notes. Essentially, you know, my turning point, because a lot of people ask me that. What was your turning point? What was that catalytic moment for you? And for me, there were two. There was one which was a fight, and the second one which was a funeral. The first one was a fight, and it was me and my wife, and we were sitting in the living room, and we were 3 years into marriage, and we started fighting about money and fighting. Then it morphed into something else. Anyways, it got very, very heated, and we, for the first time in our marriage, we used the word divorce, which we'd always said we wouldn't use. And you know, I'm speaking of it pretty lightly, you know, on air here, but it was an
Right.
incredibly serious moment, and I felt for the first time in my life I wasn't going to be able to fix this, and that we were, you know, maybe one more fight away from losing everything, you know, and I was struggling, right, because I I knew I wanted something different, but I didn't know how. I was stuck. And then, and to spin it back even more, you know, you asked me where I came from. I was raised in a very dysfunctional home, right? Crime, drug abuse, alcohol abuse was littered throughout my home growing up. I had a non-existent relationship with my father, an alcoholic, you know, all those different things. And so I knew where I came from, and I knew I wanted something differently, but I didn't know how. I kept feeling myself getting pulled back into the same behaviors and the choices that my family and my father would make. And I would, when I would scream, I would hear his words and hear his voice in mine. Maybe your listeners have been there. Um, and so, you know, and that was a challenging thing. I didn't understand because I'd be at work and I'd have professional success. I'd lead teams, build organizations, and I'd come home, you know, and feel powerless. Like I didn't even know how to talk to my own wife. And I felt like I was two people trapped in the same body. At times there was this duality that was kind of tearing me apart, you know. And so now a week after that, where I was like, is this going to work? Is it not? I don't know. We're fighting through it. The second moment was a funeral, and I was asked to sing at this funeral, this really wealthy philanthropic man, and there was a couple thousand people there. And as the minister was wrapping up, I was putting on my guitar and I was getting ready to sing the last song, and I heard him ask the crowd, "Are you living a life worthy of imitation? If you were to die tomorrow, would you be proud of the legacy that you left?" And Danny, the second I heard that question, it just shot through my heart, you know, like an arrow. And I was like, if this was my funeral, I don't think there would be anyone here saying, I want to model the marriage that he had, or I want the body that he had, or I want to be the dad that he was. In fact, the only thing that they would be saying at that point was, he struggled and then it was over. And it was really sad, man. So by the time I left the church that day, I was determined that I would rewrite my story, not just for me, but for my family, for my wife. I committed, and it sounds intense, but I committed, you know, to the fact that I had to die to the man that I was in order to become the man that I needed to be, right? And so really what happened was, over the next, you know, few months, I surrounded myself with men who were living where I wanted to go. Man, these guys, like, my ceiling was their floor. You know, like they showed me what was possible, and we could get into why that worked and how that worked. But at the end of the day, Danny, within 18 months or a year and a half, because we were drowning in debt. It was about 100 grand in debt. I was depressed.
Wow.
I was medicating with alcohol and drugs. Like, I was 60 pounds overweight, you name it. Within 18 months, I had lost the 60 pounds, built a strong, lean body. We had paid off the 100 grand of debt. Marriage was completely restored. And I was clean of substances and distractions, man. And I was focused. So then I just started helping friends of mine because I was in leadership positions this whole time,
Mhm.
and I started helping buddies of mine who are having a hard time in their marriage, or helping them get out of debt, or different things like that. And then so somebody challenged me, a mentor challenged me. He said, "Man, if you really want to have impact, if you really want to, have a legacy, start a podcast." And so then I launched the Dad Nation podcast, and within a few months, I had listeners all around North America, and then they would start asking me questions about, could you coach me? Could you teach me how you did this? And then I started my coaching firm, and then I grew that to six figures. And so that was my story, man. So that's why I'm here.
That's all. So let's talk about the coaching and maybe the journey. So what does that look like? A guy is in your, he's 50 pounds overweight, 100 grand in debt. Him and his wife used to use the divorce word, which I'm with you too, man. Like that is when that word gets thrown out, like that's bad. So you were in a bad place from a coaching standpoint, or maybe just a journey standpoint. What does it look like? Like, where did you start? Was it on the health side? Was it on do you pick what's the worst and work on that first? Does everything happen at the same time? What does a journey look like from, 5 years ago to you today? Take a guy on that journey.
Yeah. No, that's good. I'll give you some real tactical steps that I took that really that I carry into my coaching practice today. There's actually the things that I teach today. Of course, there's a lot more nuance and it's a lot more sophisticated, and it's all built into systems and frameworks. But at the end of the day, for the most part, it's exactly what I did. So the first thing I did, like I said, I reached out to 5 men, and I call it the Iron Five. And that comes from that old saying that you are the combination of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so, Danny, what I did, man, was I thought, what are the areas I need to grow in? I know my fitness, my finances, my marriage, and in my mindset, and my spirituality. And so I thought about the 5 men in my life, and I thought, who has the best marriage that I know? Who's in the best shape that I know? And legit, who has the most money that I know? You know, and I just reached out to them, and I was like, "Hey, would you be willing to go for coffee like once a month and just talk to me about how you did what you did? Show me maybe how to take the right steps." And it was loose and it was organic, but these men I ended up building an amazing relationship with them, and they not only showed me the steps to take, but they actually helped me see for myself that it was possible, because there was a big mindset gap that I had to overcome, which I'm going to get into next. But so for me, the first step was getting around other men that were steps ahead of me, that could show me what was possible. And that's actually why I ended up creating the Dad Nation Coalition, which is my group coaching platform. But then the second thing I did was I began with the end in mind. And if you're listening to this today, I can't stress this enough. This is where the deep work begins. You must begin with the end in mind. Stephen Covey, in his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, dedicated an entire chapter to this called Begin with the End in Mind. Napoleon Hill, talked about that all the time. My funeral moment, where the minister asked, "Are you living a life worth imitating?" was my beginning with the end in mind. And so I walk my clients through a eulogy writing exercise. So I get them to write a eulogy from the perspective of their wife, or their children. If you were to die today, I want you to write that eulogy and visualize her standing up there over your casket, reading it. What would she say? What would she say about the father you were? What would she say about the husband And then I'm going to get you to write a version 2.0. This is what you would want them to say at your funeral, okay? Because here's the gap that people get caught in. The man that we are today and the man that we want to be, the man that we know we could be. In here lies the tension, the frustration, the anxiety of not, and that's just called not living up to maybe your potential or your purpose or your passion or whatever you want to call it. But that's the first step of getting super honest with yourself, and looking at the end of my life. And because I'll ask questions and they seem so basic in the beginning, but the more you really dig down, the deeper they are. Like, what do you want? I tell you, Danny, 90% of my clients who run 7-figure companies don't even know how to answer that question. Like, I
Right.
don't know what I want. I've been so busy building this business or whatever. Or what do you want to be known for at the end of your life? Or if you had buddies at a pub having a beer and they were talking about Danny, what do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as the guy who built the businesses, or the guy who showed up for his wife and was an amazing dad? You name it. And so we get very, very clear on how on some of those end of the the end, and then we start strategically working backward. And I call it the mission map, which is essentially a map for your mission, right? You're rewriting your story. And so you reverse engineer that image, you know, into strategies and daily action steps, right? To become that person. So a question that I ask my clients and people often is, and I would love for you listeners to think about this one, because this is often a starting point, and I'll just ask you, Danny, like, if me and you were to bump into each other in an airport, say 3 years from now, and I'm like, hey, Danny, how's it going, man? I haven't seen you since we recorded a podcast episode together. How's life? And you were like, and if you answered, Mitchell, this has been the best 3 years of my life, let me tell you about it. Then the answer to that question, what would have to be true for the next 3 years for them to be the best 3 years of your life? And when we get very, very specific, and this is based on this concept of a psychological concept of externalizing. You're taking yourself out of your present situation, eliminating the fears and all that stuff, and you're actually projecting yourself into a future version of yourself 3 years from now, because that's seeable. 10 years is too far.
Right.
You're answering that question. What am I doing for work? How much money am I making? What's my relationship with my wife like? What do we do for fun? Where do I live? How do I, what's my relationship with my kids? Who am I spending my time with? And you just start to paint that picture very, very, very clearly. And then you take that, and that's our starting point, right? And then we start to work backwards. Okay, well, if this guy makes $250K a year, what does he need to start doing? What are strategies he needs to implement over the next year to see that come to fruition? If he takes, 3-day weekends every weekend, okay, what do we need to do? If he goes on a date night once a week, if he goes on a daddy-daughter date once a week, how do we start to make that happen today, so then 3 years from now, you're living that life? Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I think for me, and I think most guys, it's really hard to connect the dots. I think I could say, like for this podcast, I would love to have 1 million downloads. Like that would be cool. I'm sure you would love $1 million. Maybe you're at $1 million downloads. I guess I don't actually know that yet. But to connect the dots between here and there is very challenging. Like, how do I go from what I'm doing now to here, especially if you don't have anybody in your life? And I think that's probably where a coach comes in. I know there's some guys that don't have, like, if they were going to go try to talk to the richest person they knew, it would be a dude who's selling drugs right now. Yeah. Or it would be, the guy, their boss who's just making $10,000 more. They don't have a network of people. And so I think someone like you that they could get put into their life is super important. It's funny. You named 5 things that, every guy should work on. I literally have almost the same exact 5 things. And I've got that by talking to people, talking to you, like gathering us together. It's for me, I break it down into health, and that's 2 categories: fitness and food. Like, what are you eating? What are you doing? Your finances. I think financially, if you're not doing well, it's really hard to manage all the other ones. Building relationships. For me, I want to always have something out in the future that I'm working towards. Mm-hmm. And I think having a coach is super important. So I'm going to let you coach me. Maybe take me what through the process is. I'm 45 years old. I have been in amazing shape. Like I've climbed the tallest mountain in South America. I've run 24-hour adventure races, and I'm not there right now. So like I know where I've been, but I'm having a hard time doing it as a 45-year-old. I'm probably 15 pounds heavier than I want to be. Show me what coaching would look like with that problem. So maybe in the next 5-10 minutes.
Yeah. So just before we jump there, I would say I agree with you 100%. That coaching really just collapses time. Like you could risk not doing this or taking you 5 years or a decade, or you can do this all in 4 months and have someone teach you exactly what you need to do, and exactly what you need to say, and exactly what you need to, where you need to go. So when it comes to, I mean, the question you asked me was about, you want to lose the 15 pounds. You used to be super fit and now you're not, right? So you're looking for kind of
I'll add this. I understand how to do that. What I'm struggling with is like the mindset of doing it because the things I used to do aren't working. I saw like that's specific. Like I used to be able to eat whatever I wanted. I just outworked my diet. Now at 45, it's impossible. So it's a mindset thing for me. Like how do I change my mindset from what I used to do till today?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So because it's a mindset thing, we know if you have the information, then it's not a lack of information. It's a lack of your beliefs or observation of your lifestyle patterns. And so the first place I would go is to your food, number one, because we know that food is like 85% of your progress, So I would say, do you eat for fuel, or do you eat to feel good?
Usually I eat to feel good. Well, so it's interesting. I have two lives. One life, I live at work. I work a 24-hour shift. I live in a fire station, and my meals are now prepared for me. And so, not that I can't really control what we're going to eat. I can control how much. When I eat at home, I actually eat much healthier. My wife and family, we're meat, vegetable, starch. We don't eat a lot of fried food. So it's kind of, I would say I kind of have both, but I really do enjoy food, and I do eat for fun many times. Like I enjoy that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we eat for 3 different reasons. There's 3 types of hunger. Okay. The first hunger is stomach hunger. And that's when we actually eat because we're physiologically hungry. Your stomach is growling. The second reason we eat is because of what's called mouth hunger. That's when we eat because we're craving some kind of texture or flavor. So we want something creamy, we want something salty, we want something crunchy. We're not actually hungry.
Right.
The third one is heart hunger. And 90% of the time when we overeat, this is why we do it. Because we've been stressed, had a hard shift at the station, are tired, overwhelmed, anxious, mad, whatever, even really happy. We want to reward ourselves. And so we eat because of our heart. It's an emotional bond we have with food, right? And so I would ask, man, like, what are times that you find yourself, do you think that you always eat because of your stomach hunger, or do you sometimes eat because of mouth hunger or heart hunger?
I would say I'm very rarely hungry because of stomach hunger, because we live in a great country with lots of food, and my meals are pretty consistent. So I would say, I don't feel like I'm stressed out a lot, but I'm sure I am. There's no way that I could be doing what I'm doing and not have that stress. So I'm sure it's a combination between, like mouth hunger, just like I want something sweet. Like if I had to pick something, it would be something sweet. And then there's been times where I always stop eating at 8:00 at night. Like that was just I'm not going to snack. But when I am stressed, I snack. That is probably where, if I'm adding an extra 500 calories to my meal or to my day, it's after 8:00 at night, because for reasons, just something came up. And so I'd say that's probably where I'm struggling with, is the snacking at night. And it is probably due to stress.
So why did you stop? Why did you go from not eating at past 8 p.m. to now eating past 8 p.m.?
I initially started doing that. I did 75 hard, and that was my diet. I intermittent fasted. I stopped at 8. I didn't eat till noon, and I really enjoyed it. And I lost weight. And then I felt like I was okay. Like it was more of like a creep than it was like, oh, I'll do it, 5 nights a week. I won't do it on weekends. And then I went to, 3 nights a week, or I'll only do it at work, but not at home till now. Like I stopped last night, probably eating about 8 o'clock. So I was good last night, and I haven't had lunch yet. It's 11 o'clock here. So I'm doing okay now, but I just haven't been consistent. I haven't implemented that. I haven't been rigid with that implementation. And I think it was just more of a creep than a decision to like, I'm not going to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everything is a decision, right? Whether you consciously make the decision or you subconsciously make the decision,
Right.
you're making the decision. Here's the problem with the evening time, and this is why you'll never see a Burger King ad at 7 a.m. You're never going to see a Domino's Pizza ad at 10 a.m. You're always going to see them past 8 p.m. And why is that? Because we know that our willpower is weak. And that's to think about it like this. Okay, if your listeners are listening versus watching, I've got a fistful of pens in my hand. In the morning when you get up and you decide not to have that, frappuccino on the way to work, that's one good decision you made, right? I just removed the pen. When you go out with your buddies for lunch and they all have cheeseburgers and a couple beers, and you decide to have a chicken salad, that's another decision. Donuts show up at the office, another couple decisions. You get super stressed out and you're driving home and you decide not to stop into the drive-through for like a pre-dinner snack. That took a lot. So that's your willpower there. Or maybe you come home and your kids are screaming and your wife is losing it, and you got to keep your cool. You've used up all of your willpower by the time you finish dinner,
Right.
and so it's limited, right? And so what happens is then boom, you sit down to watch TV, and then ding ding ding, skip the dishes, DoorDash, whatever your food delivery service is on your phone, is on ads everywhere. You're being inundated with it, right? So number one, understand that it's very, very difficult to get to make high quality decisions later at night. James Clear says in his book, Atomic Habits, that you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. That means you don't just make a goal to not eat past 8 p.m. and just magically meet it, or you don't make a goal to lose 15 pounds and just do it. You have to have systems in your life. Right. And so this is why we talk about, so what I talked about there was willpower. So I talk about this idea that why power is far greater than our willpower. Okay. So what we need to do is we need to route these goals to our why rather than just our will. And so I could say to you, Danny, like, I want to lose 15 pounds, or I want to get a 6-pack, or I want to work out 4 times a week. Okay, great. Now that's going to fade pretty quickly. But if I say, I want to be healthy and well enough to walk my daughter down the aisle one day because I want to see her get married, or I want to be able to throw my grandkids around and be able to chase and keep up with them when I'm in my 60s or 70s. These are long-term goals that are connected deeply to, the things we care about the most. I want to be able to play hockey with my son, and be able to keep up with him. And so understanding that you're at some point when your will gives out, your why has to kick in. And so that's a couple things that I would dig into, understanding your emotional relationship with food. I actually have guys track. Like, I'm like, the first couple of weeks, I'm like, I'm not even going to change anything you're eating. I'm just going to get you to document every time you put food in your mouth. Why was it? Was it because of your stomach? So it's S, M, and H. All you do is write it down, S, M, H. And then we're going to look at your your progress. Okay, let's see how much time are you eating because you're emotional versus how much time you're eating because it's something you craved in your mouth versus actual hunger. Right? Then we're going to look at your stressors and what's do a time and energy audit, because the stress, the frustration, the whatever, that's huge. And then understanding why you want what you want. Why do you want to get in shape? Because you want to look jacked? or because you want to be fit for your family, because you want to be strong, you want to be easy to love and hard to kill, you know,
Hmm.
all those different things, right? And so again, none of that is about giving you a fitness plan. None of that is about, we haven't even started talking about macros and
Right, right,
calories and training plans.
right,
We're talking, this is the deep work that you need to like really dial in, because if you don't do that, you're going to keep falling off the bandwagon over and over again. And this is what we call the yo-yo diet, right?
right,
Where we we do good for a little while, we do 75 hard,
right,
but that's not sustainable, so we try to carnivore, then that's not sustainable, so we try keto, and that's not sustainable. Instead of actually just looking at our entire lifestyle and saying, let's build a sustainable plan for you. Remember, going back to what I was saying, beginning with the end in mind and comparison. Well, stop comparing yourself to what Joe Rogan does or whoever
right,
does. They have a different life. And so
right,
that's why with my clients, I build them a custom nutrition plan based on the food that they and their family is already eating. All right. You
right,
like spaghetti and that's what your wife makes. Okay. Let's factor that in. We're going to build a nutrition plan based off of the food you're already eating. Why? Because that's actually sustainable. I'm not going to give
right,
you some crazy cookie cutter plan that's going to make you learn how to cook. Or again, same
right,
thing with the training plans. You get a plan based on the equipment you have access to. So maybe you're going to a commercial gym. Maybe you got a yoga mat and a dumbbell. All right, we'll work with
right,
that, because that is the sustainable thing. The best plan is the plan that you can keep doing.
right,
That's it. Because it's
right.
consistency over intensity every single time. Does that make sense?
Not for sure.
That's
That's
some
awesome.
things I would dig into.
Okay. Mitchell, that is good coaching, and I appreciate that. So, guys, if you know where you want to be, or maybe you don't know where you want to be, I want you to get help. Whether that's sending me an email or contacting Mitchell, I want you to do that. I want us to be successful as men. Like, I want to hear the success stories of me and my wife had the conversation. We both threw out divorce. We realized this can't happen. And I truly believe in having someone else do that, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a coach. So, Mitchell, in this last couple of minutes, why don't you tell the guys how they can work with you? I know you mentioned you had a resource for them. Like, how can they reach out? And was there anything else I didn't ask that I should have?
No, man. Yeah, I'll tell you about that. But if you don't mind, I'd love to just share a quick testimony of one of
Yeah,
my
for sure.
clients. Yeah, because I think a lot of guys who are listening still might be struggling with this self belief, right? That they don't necessarily have the confidence. Because at the end of the day, it's not that they don't believe in you or me; they don't actually
Right.
believe in themselves, right? And so I'll tell you a little quick story about one of my clients. His name is Mark, and he actually called me in tears. Multi-millionaire, has runs this super large company, and he found out his wife had a bunch of runaway money saved up, and she had a down payment put on a place, and he found out she was about to be taking the kids. So he called me in tears. He was actually drunk on the call, and
Yeah.
he said, I'm drinking 10, 12 beers a night. I run this 7-figure company, but when my wife gets home, like I go into my room and I drink myself to sleep. I don't even know how to talk to her anymore. I'm stressed out. She's going to leave me. She's taking the girls. What do I do? You know, this guy was pre-diabetic. He
Hmm.
was on medication for high blood pressure, high cholesterol, 70 pounds overweight, alcoholic, a high functioning alcoholic, and his marriage was pretty much over. After working together for 6 months, he's, I wish I could show you pictures. Well, I could, but I didn't prepare it. But he's down
Right.
60 pounds, completely clean bill of health. His doctor thought he was on Ozempic, because he was like,
Right.
how are you losing all this weight? He just ran a half marathon, um,
That's awesome.
dating his wife, and no more pre-diabetic, no more blood pressure medication or cholesterol medication. The dude is on fire. And so why do I say all that? Is because for in every way of his life, you would look at a guy like that and say, "You're too far gone, man. You're gonna lose it all, and there's no
Yeah.
helping you." He was also very arrogant. He didn't even necessarily know or was willing to admit that he was doing anything wrong. And so, if a guy like that can turn his life around and go from being depressed and alcoholic, he still texts me screenshots of how many days he's been sober.
That's
I mean,
awesome.
that anybody can. All right. So if you're
Yeah.
listening to this and there's a fire growing in your gut, reach out, as Danny said, because we love to be a lone wolf, right? That's just a part of how we are as a man. But the lone wolf dies alone. Okay. The strong
Yeah.
wolf builds packs. This is what they do. You're not crazy. You're not alone in this. There are millions of men struggling with the same things that you do. And what you do is powerful, and how you show up in your home is hugely powerful. So real quick, way you can get into touch with me, honestly, you can check out the website, dadnationco.com. You can check out the Dad Nation podcast, which if you just search that, you'll find it. Honestly, if you just search Dad Nation, you'll find me. But I'd love to give your listeners that free gift, which is what I call the connection code. And it's just 50 questions that are strategically designed to spark the fun and bring the fire back. Because a lot of us as men, especially guys in business or built our own businesses, whatever, we've gone from, our date nights feel like board meetings, just with maybe some wine. Or, we've went from soulmates to roommates. And so the reality here, and we've loosely talked about this, but our wives need to be connected with on an emotional level. And this is where we're backward, is because our wives need to be connected with emotionally before they can be engaged physically. Men are the opposite. We want to engage physically before we can engage emotionally. And so this guide essentially helps you really connect with her and gives you the questions to ask her to engage her in that kind of way. And so whether it is, you want to download it and go out on a date and take 2 or 3 questions off the list, or maybe when you put the kids down, pour up a glass of wine, whatever, and then just take a couple questions and ask her, I promise you it will blow her mind. And she's just going to be like, who are you? I get emails from women all the time being like, what happened to my husband? This is incredible. I'm obsessed with him. And so that's free for you. Just go to dadnationco.com/code, or Danny, if you could put it in the show notes, and that'd be great.
All this will be in the show notes for sure.
Yeah. And if you, if you're the kind of guy who wants to take action, you're like, I'm done settling, I want someone to hold me to the standard that I said I want for me and my family, then I'd be happy to jump on a free strategy call to walk you through the programs and the different things I offer. No pressure. Just mention you were on this podcast. You heard of me on this podcast, and I'll make sure that that I jump on the call instead of somebody from my team, because I'd love to make a personal connection with you. So would love to help any way I can, man.
Awesome, Mitchell. I really appreciate it. All those resources will be linked below. Again, guys, my name is Danny Dumas. This is the Earn Your Title podcast, and I will talk to you later. Bye.